"Who gave you the transfer order, Mr. Blanche?" Senator Deborah Ross's voice cut through the hearing room like a scalpel, because exactly 1 week after your secret visit to her cell, Ghislaine Maxwell was quietly moved to what can only be described as a luxury retreat. So tell me, Mr. Blanche, what exactly did you two discuss? And what kind of deal was made behind those closed doors? Because the American people are watching, and they are not stupid. Todd Blanche sat perfectly still, his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The room held its breath. For 3 full seconds, the Attorney General of the United States, the man now sitting at the very top of American law enforcement, the man who controls every federal prosecution in this country, said absolutely nothing, and that silence told the American people everything they needed to know. But here is what makes this moment even more explosive. When Todd Blanche walked into Ghislaine Maxwell's prison cell for that 9-hour meeting, he was the Deputy Attorney General, number 2 at the DOJ. And now, sitting in front of this committee, fielding every question about that meeting, he is the Attorney General. While Maxwell got moved to a hotel-style minimum security camp, both of them, it seems, ended up somewhere far more comfortable than where they started. That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern. But to understand exactly how deep this goes, you have to go back to the beginning. Because this story doesn't start with a question. It starts with a transfer that should never have happened, and a secret meeting that no one in Washington was supposed to find out about. Here is what we know. Ghislaine Maxwell, convicted of facilitating the exploitation of vulnerable individuals through Jeffrey Epstein's elite network, was serving her sentence at FCI Tallahassee, a high-security federal facility in Florida, exactly where federal law demanded she stay. Because under Bureau of Prisons policy, individuals convicted of sexual offenses are explicitly prohibited from placement in minimum security camp settings. But then something happened that rewrote every rule in the book. 1 week before Maxwell's transfer was approved, Todd Blanche, at that time the Deputy Attorney General, and notably Donald Trump's own former personal defense attorney, walked into that prison and spent 2 full days inside. 9 hours of closed-door sessions with Ghislaine Maxwell. No public statement, no press briefing, no notification to Congress, nothing. The second most powerful law enforcement official in America sitting alone with the most dangerous convicted felon in the Epstein network, and no one was told. And then, 7 days later, Maxwell was gone. She wasn't transferred for medical reasons. She wasn't moved to another high-security facility. She was quietly relocated to FPC Bryan, a minimum security federal prison camp in Bryan, Texas. No fences, no walls. A camp built for nonviolent white-collar offenders. The exact type of facility where Ghislaine Maxwell, by every written regulation in the federal system, was legally forbidden to be placed. Senator Ross leaned forward, her eyes fixed on Blanche. She did not blink. "Mr. Blanche," she said, her voice dropping to a tone that felt more dangerous than any shout. "Are you aware that placing someone with a sexual offense conviction in a minimum security camp is a direct violation of Bureau of Prisons policy?" She paused, 1 beat. "Or did someone in your chain of command decide that the rules simply did not apply to her?" Blanche shifted in his chair. His response was measured, the verbal equivalent of a man walking very carefully across ice he already knows is cracked. He spoke about BOP's independent decision-making. He talked about security classifications. He mentioned the Bureau's own internal criteria. Ross cut him off. "Mr. Blanche, I am not asking about BOP's general process. I am asking you, specifically, personally, did your 9-hour private visit with Ghislaine Maxwell, which took place exactly 1 week before this legally questionable transfer, have anything to do with where she ended up?" The air in the room changed. Reporters stopped typing. Staff members looked up. Republican committee members suddenly became very interested in the documents directly in front of them. Blanche's hands, resting flat on the table, curled slightly inward. "The Bureau of Prisons made that determination independently," he said. Ross nodded slowly, the nod of someone who had expected exactly that answer, who had prepared for it weeks ago. "Let me bring something else into the record," she said, opening the folder in front of her. "Maxwell's attorney, David Marcus, is, by your own public record, a personal friend of yours, Mr. Blanche. You appeared on his podcast. He praised your legal skills on air. After your 9-hour meeting with his client, Marcus told reporters that Maxwell, and I'm quoting directly, answered questions about every person you could imagine and held nothing back. He said approximately 100 different individuals were discussed." She looked up from the page. 100 names, Mr. Blanche, in 9 hours, behind closed doors, with no victims' advocates present, because Jack Scarola, the attorney representing approximately 20 of Epstein's victims, asked to be included in those interviews and was denied. She set the page down. So Maxwell's own attorney is your close personal friend. The victims' representatives were locked out, and within 7 days of that meeting, she is living in conditions that no other inmate at that facility has ever received. Are we still calling this routine? Blanche's expression remained carefully, professionally controlled, but the color in his face had shifted. Barely, but it had shifted. The Department of Justice has not offered any plea agreement, sentence reduction, or benefit of any kind to Ms. Maxwell, he said. Ross let that sentence exist in the air for a moment, like an exhibit being held up to the light. No formal agreement, she repeated quietly. And yet, within 7 days of your meeting, she was placed in a facility she was legally prohibited from entering. She opened another page, a facility where, according to multiple whistleblower accounts submitted to this committee, Ghislaine Maxwell has been receiving treatment that can only be described as extraordinary, she began reading, and every word landed in the room like a stone. Maxwell had been given access to the dog therapy program at FPC Bryan, a program from which individuals convicted of sexual offenses are categorically and explicitly banned. When she expressed discomfort about her assigned roommates, those roommates were removed. When she said she did not want other inmates looking into her space, prison staff physically rearranged furniture in the corridor outside her cell to protect her privacy. She received customized meals delivered directly to her quarters instead of eating in the general dining hall. While every other inmate in that facility received a ration of 2 rolls of toilet paper per week, Maxwell received an unlimited supply. During hours when every other prisoner was locked down for the night, Maxwell was escorted, now alone under guard, to the gym and the walking track, alone, in the middle of the night, while convicted violent offenders slept in their cells. Mr. Blanche, Ross said, her voice now carrying the edge of controlled fury, a senior official at FPC Bryan was reportedly overheard telling colleagues, and this is from testimony submitted directly to this committee, "I am tired of being Maxwell's errand boy," end quote. She paused. Do you know what happened to the inmates who agreed, who went to supervisors and said this is wrong, who said that a woman convicted of these crimes should not be receiving this kind of special treatment? 1 beat, 2 beats, 3. They were sent to solitary confinement or transferred immediately to higher security facilities. One woman, a mother whose own daughter had been victimized by similar crimes, filed a formal complaint. She was punished for it. Ross set her papers down flat on the table. So let me make sure I understand correctly. The woman who helped run one of the most devastating criminal networks in American history is living like a VIP, and the women who dared to say something about it are the ones being punished. Blanche's right hand pressed flat against the table. He did not move it, but Ross was not finished, not even close. Mr. Blanche, I need to raise something that the American people have a right to hear directly. She picked up a third document. Ghislaine Maxwell, fully in her own recorded words, made the following statement about former President Donald Trump. She read clearly, calmly, with precision. She said, I never witnessed the president in any inappropriate setting. He was a gentleman in every respect during all the times I was in his company. The room was completely silent. Mr. Blanche. Ross looked directly at him. You are Donald Trump's former personal defense attorney. You defended him in federal criminal proceedings. You are now his attorney general. And the woman who just publicly and on record cleared him of any wrongdoing, across what appears to be decades of relevant social contact, was interviewed for 9 hours by you personally, then transferred within 1 week to a facility she was prohibited by law from entering, where she now receives conditions no other inmate has ever been given. She folded her hands. At what point does the American public stop being asked to treat these facts as unrelated? Blanche's jaw tightened. His answer came carefully, word by word. BOP made its decision independently. The integrity of the process was maintained. There was no coordination between his office and the facility's classification decision. Ross didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Mr. Blanche, she said, almost quietly now, Jeffrey Epstein, the man at the center of all of this, died in a maximum security federal facility while supposedly under suicide watch. Cameras in his unit malfunctioned. Guards were asleep. The forensic pathologist hired independently by his family concluded the evidence was more consistent with something other than what was officially reported. She paused. And now Epstein is gone. under circumstances that remain genuinely disputed by independent forensic experts. And Maxwell is in Texas being treated like a resort guest. She leaned forward. The American people were not stupid when Epstein died. They are not stupid now. And they are getting very tired of being treated as though they are. Blanche opened his mouth. Ross held up one hand. I have one final question, and I want a direct answer. Her voice was flat and precise, like a blade laid on a table. You were the Deputy Attorney General when you sat with Ghislaine Maxwell for 9 hours. You are now the Attorney General. In both roles, then and now, you have access to every document, every communication, every internal memo related to this transfer. So I am asking you, Mr. Blanche, one more time. She looked at him without blinking. Who gave the order to transfer Ghislaine Maxwell to a facility she was legally prohibited from entering? Give me a name. The silence that followed lasted longer than any silence in that hearing room that day. Blanche said the Bureau of Prisons had made the determination through its standard internal review. A name, Ross said. He could not provide one. You cannot name the person who authorized a transfer that violated written federal policy, Ross said. The man who spent 9 hours alone with Ghislaine Maxwell, who is now the Attorney General of the United States, cannot tell this committee who signed off on moving her to a prohibited facility 1 week after that meeting. She closed her folder. The American people watched Jeffrey Epstein die under disputed circumstances in a federal cell. They watched documents get sealed and names get permanently redacted. They watched the most powerful people in this network walk away without a single charge, a single question, a single consequence. They watched Epstein and Maxwell get declared the only two people responsible for a criminal network that, according to Maxwell's own attorney, involved approximately 100 individuals who were discussed in your 9-hour meeting. She looked at Blanche one final time. And now they are watching this. Todd Blanche sat completely still, his face composed, his hands flat on the table, but the pen in front of him, which he had not touched once during the entire exchange, was no longer in the position it had been 40 minutes ago. 100 names, 9 hours, 7 days, 0 answers. Here is your question for today, just one, and it only takes one word to answer. Do you believe Ghislaine Maxwell's transfer was a coincidence or a deal? Drop it in the comments right now.